By the year 23 BC, Caesar Augustus was beginning to experience backlash against many of his discernibly monarchical actions which spoke louder than the show of words he had performed before the Senate in 27 BC as evidence of laying down his tyrannical powers. In that year, Caesar Augustus had entered into a constitutional settlement with the Senate, conveniently dividing oversight of Rome's provinces such that those boasting the majority of Rome's legions now fell under his control. He then continued to win re-election as consul for each successive year, surpassing the previously unprecedented record of 6 consulships achieved by Gaius Marius. Discreetly cloaking his exercise of power in the veneer of traditional republican offices, Augustus wielded authority by virtue of his personal influence, appointing his supporters to positions of power while simultaneously weakening his political opposition. In 27 BC, Caesar Augustus used some clever legalese to deny Marcus Licinius Crassus the honor of dedicating the Spolia Opima within the temple of Jupiter Feretrius. That same year, before leaving Rome for war against the Cantabrians in Hispania, Caesar Augustus appointed one of his supporters, Messala Corvinus, to the office of city prefect, a despotic office designed to keep Roman citizens in line while Rome's ruler was away from the city. Messala Corvinus resigned the post 11 days later. By 26 BC, Augustus had parted ways with Gaius Cornelius Gallus, whom he had left to govern Egypt, but not before Gallus had proven himself militarily by defeating what remained of Cleopatra's supporters and had succeeded in creating a new buffer state between Egypt and Ethiopia. Then, Gaius Cornelius Gallus committed suicide. While in Hispania, Augustus employed his stepson Tiberius and his nephew Marcellus as military tribunes, then promoted them temporarily as aediles for the purpose of planning and implementing the festival games commemorating the founding of Hispania's newest city, Augusta Emerita. Near the end of 24 BC, Caesar Augustus gave a generous donation of 400 sesterces to each Roman man when he returned to the city, thereby ingratiating himself with the Roman citizenry. Soon after, Tiberius became quaestor and Marcellus became aedile. With the hope of creating an avenue for Caesar Augustus to comfortably relinquish his power, subtly disguised as it was, the Senate voted Rome's first citizen be exempt from the laws of Rome. After all, it had been the ever-present threat of prosecution for his illegal war in Gaul which had prevented Augustus' adoptive father, Julius Caesar, from becoming a private citizen, thus launching Rome into civil war. By removing the threat of any prosecution, many within the Senate fought to entice Caesar Augustus into stepping down without fear of reprisal. But the Princeps Civitatis did not step down. Instead, the son of Divus Julius Caesar used his authority to extract from the Senate the right for his nephew Marcellus, whom he had married to his daughter, to stand for the consulship a decade before the legal age. This crisis surrounding the illusion of monarchy came to a head in the spring of 23 BC, when Caesar Augustus was struck by the plague that had visited Rome. From his deathbed, Caesar Augustus once again made a gesture of restoring the Republic by turning over the state ledgers to the consul. But the move that stunned all, the Senate and Marcellus alike, was the giving of his signet ring to Agrippa. Marcellus and his supporters had fully expected that Marcellus would be named Caesar Augustus' heir. Yet Augustus was now recommending Agrippa to the Senate as his replacement to lead the legions. With the consequences of his act now sealed by his ring, Rome's first citizen made a miraculous recovery from the plague which had killed thousands. Storming into a Senate meeting, Augustus was prepared to read his last will and testament aloud as proof he had named no heir, which would put to rest any suspicions that he had been secretly laying the groundwork for the recreation of a monarchy. By the end of the 23 BC year, the Senate had received the official submission of Parthia's envoys, and in private meetings with Parthian ambassadors, Augustus had discussed the exchange of King Phraates' kidnapped prince for Rome's missing standards and legions. Marcus Vipsanius Agrippa, whose discreet efforts on the island of Lesbos had helped facilitate the arrangement between Rome and Parthia, was now needed back in Rome as a watchdog, while Augustus headed for the east to reap the rewards of the diplomatic enterprises of Agrippa. Sometime after the annual September Ludi Romani Games, held under a brightly coloured marquee in the Forum Romanum at the direction of Caesar's nephew Marcellus, in his position as curule aedile, Marcellus left Rome for a vacation with his new bride. In the city of Baiae, a town full of luxury seaside villas frequented by Rome's most wealthy elite, Marcus Claudius Marcellus suddenly fell ill, exhibiting symptoms resembling those Augustus had previously suffered. Once again, the freedman physician Antonius Musa was engaged. After successfully healing Caesar Augustus earlier that same year, the first citizen had shown his gratitude by awarding the physician a huge sum of money, dedicating a monument to him, and by granting tax-exempt status to him and to his entire profession. He also legally changed Musa's citizenship status from freedman to that of freeborn citizen, giving him the right to wear gold rings. Antonius Musa now went to the aid of Marcellus in Baiae. There he employed the same ice baths, cold compresses, and dietary treatments he had formerly used to treat Caesar Augustus, but to no avail. Marcus Claudius Marcellus, the 19-year-old son of Octavia Verina and the late Gaius Claudius Marcellus, died in the family's summer villa at Baiae. Marcellus's body was transported back to Rome where, surrounded by his mourning family, he was given a grand public funeral before being cremated. The young Marcellus was the first to be interred within the newly constructed mausoleum which Augustus Caesar had begun building alongside the Tiber River following his return from Egypt. Not far from Augustus's mausoleum, also along the river Tiber, sat the foundation for a new open-air theatre construction project begun by Julius Caesar. This theatre, Caesar Augustus now dedicated to his nephew, naming it the Theatre of Marcellus. A large library stood between the temples of Jupiter Stator and Juno Regina, which buttressed the Tiber alongside the new theatre. This library was dedicated to Marcellus by his mother, Octavia Verina, who also funded the construction of a portico enclosing the three structures to be built in her son's name. Caesar Augustus furthermore commanded that a golden effigy of his nephew be cast and be accompanied by a golden chair and crown, to be carried into the theatre of Marcellus to celebrate the Ludi Romani upon the theatre's completion. Caesar Augustus granted to Marcellus, in death, a level of prestige he had never attained in life. Soon after Marcellus died, sometime in 22 BC, Marcus Vipsanius Agrippa returned to Rome and was promised the hand of Caesar Augustus' newly widowed 18-year-old daughter Julia in marriage, following the traditional observances of her public mourning period. Also in 22 BC, a major trial hit the courts. Marcus Primus, the former governor of Macedonia, was charged with making independent war against the Odrysian kingdom of Thrace, whose king was a friend and ally of Rome. It was the Senate alone who possessed the authority to declare war within one of their provinces, and for having acted independently of the Senate, Marcus Primus was indicted for treason. Primus was defended by one of Caesar's own courtiers. This courtier was Lucius Licinius Varro Murena, the natural-born son of Lucius Licinius Murena, who was the stepfather of Fulvia Flaccus Bambula, and had been adopted into the Terentius Varro family. His sister Terentia was the wife of Caesar's propagandist Gaius Maecenas, and his brother Proculus was the very man responsible for the apprehension of Queen Cleopatra. In his defense, Marcus Primus claimed he had been ordered to make war against the Odrysian kingdom by none other than Caesar Augustus himself, who needed a constant state of war on the frontier so that he might maintain power within Rome. Because Varro Murena was a member of Caesar Augustus' inner circle of friends, his willingness to defend Marcus Primus clearly indicates there was trouble within the new Augustan court of the early 20s BC, likely as a result of Caesar's blatant attempt to rebuild a Roman monarchy. In response to the claim that he had ordered the fighting in Thrace, Caesar Augustus showed up at the trial of Marcus Primus despite not having been subpoenaed as a witness. As he entered, Varro Murena, outraged that Caesar would appear in court without a summons, merely to intimidate the witness, shouted, "What are you doing here, and who summoned you?" Caesar responded by answering, "The res publica," or the public weal, wasting no opportunity to identify his person with the Roman state. After Caesar was cross-examined as a hostile witness, Marcus Primus then announced that he had received the orders to invade the Etruscan kingdom from Caesar's nephew, Marcus Claudius Marcellus, who could not be cross-examined. Marcus Primus was found guilty of treason despite several votes for his acquittal cast by senators within the court who believed Primus was telling the truth and that he had been instructed to make war by either Caesar Augustus or Marcellus, either case being sufficient proof of Caesar's attempt to manipulate politics outside his provincial spheres of influence. Crassus, Gallus, Proculus, Primus, and now Varro Murena. With so many from the Augustan court turning against him, it was time for Caesar Augustus to leave the city.